The cold wind howled through the broken walls of the Verona 7 spaceport. Snowflakes weren't natural here, but the planet's reactor storms had shifted the climate. Everything felt frozen. The ground, the sky, even people's hearts, Jace. Carter pulled his coat tighter. It was old and torn, full of patches and holes. He had only one credit left in his pocket, one single credit. Enough to buy a cheap meal, a blanket, or maybe a ride to the next system if he was lucky. He stepped into the market square. Filled with smoke and broken neon signs, vendors shouted in different alien languages, trying to sell parts, weapons, or food that smelled like rust and fire. Nobody smiled. Everyone was just surviving. Jace didn't belong here. He was human, from Earth. And Earth was no longer a safe place to talk about. He had been running for years, running from war, from betrayal, and from memories. As he walked past an alley, something made him stop. It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling, like the air got heavier. He turned and saw her, an alien woman, thin and trembling, sat on the ground with her knees pulled close to her chest. Her skin was pale blue and cracked like dry glass. Her eyes were silver, glowing softly in the dark. Beside her lay a small bundle wrapped in rags. A child maybe, no older than 5. She held the bundle close, trying to keep it warm, but the cold was too strong, and her body was too weak. Jace looked around. Dozens of people passed the alley, aliens of all kinds, tall, short, armored, masked, but none of them looked at her. Nobody cared. They just walked by. He took one step closer. The woman looked up, her lips shaking. She didn't speak, she didn't beg, but her eyes begged louder than words. Jace clenched his fist. He had no food, no weapons, no ship. He had one credit, and that was all. If he spent it, he'd freeze too. He could walk away, forget her, and focus on saving himself. But something inside him wouldn't let him. He turned and walked back to a stall. The vendor stared at him with 3 blinking eyes. Jace pointed at the cheapest thermal blanket. Thin, cheap, but warm enough to save a life. He handed over his last credit. Now he had nothing. He walked back to the alley and knelt beside the woman. Without a word, he wrapped the blanket around her and the child. She flinched at first, surprised. Then she looked into his eyes, and something passed between them. A spark, a silent bond. You didn't have to. She whispered, her voice shaking like her hands. I know, Jace replied. But I did. The blanket began to glow slightly, activated by body heat. Her child shifted and made a small sound. Still alive, just cold and tired. Jace stood up, ready to leave. His body was already shivering, but he felt a strange warmth inside his chest. Maybe kindness could still exist in a cold galaxy, but as he turned to go, her voice stopped him again. Wait, she said. You're Jace Carter, aren't you? He froze. How did she know his name? He turned slowly, confused. Yes, he said carefully. How do you know that? The woman stood, holding the child close. Her silver eyes glowed brighter now. She stepped toward him, her body straighter. Stronger than before. I know who you are, she said, her voice no longer weak. And now that you've helped me, they will come for you. Jace's heart pounded in his chest. What do you mean? Who's coming? But she didn't answer. She just touched his hand, gently, and whispered something in a language he didn't understand. The wind howled louder. The sky turned a strange shade of purple, and far in the distance, something blinked. Not stars, not ships, something watching. Jace looked at her again. She smiled softly, not with joy, but with sadness. Thank you, Jace Carter, she said. You just changed your fate. And then she was gone, disappeared into the shadows of the alley, leaving only the blanket and a trail of glowing footprints. Jace stood in silence, his last credit spent, his path uncertain, and danger now following his name. But somehow he didn't feel regret. He felt alive. Jace Carter didn't sleep that night. He sat under a broken roof, his arms wrapped around himself, shivering from the cold. The alley where he had seen the alien widow was empty now. No footprints, no child, no sign that anyone had ever been there, but her words kept echoing in his head. They will come for you now. Who was she? How did she know his name? And what had he done to attract the attention of them? The spaceport came alive as the second sun rose over Verona 7. Ships lifted into the sky with loud engines. Traders shouted. Guards pushed beggars away. Jace stood up and moved into the shadows. His stomach was empty, his body frozen, but his mind was burning with questions. He needed answers, and fast. He walked toward the lower docks, where smugglers and illegal traders operated. If the woman had vanished, maybe someone had seen where she went. He was asking around quietly, but nobody seemed to know anything. Someone grabbed his arm. It was a small alien boy with green skin and nervous eyes. Are you the human who gave the blanket? The boy whispered. Jace nodded. The boy looked around quickly, then handed him a chip data tablet. She told me to give you this. Before Jace could ask more, the boy ran off into the crowd and disappeared. Jace tapped the screen, and a low-resolution image appeared. It was a map of Verona 7's underground tunnels, the kind used by criminals, refugees, and those who wanted to stay hidden. A blinking red dot marked a location far below the market. A message appeared, just 5 words. Come if you still care. Jace didn't understand why, but his feet started moving. Through rusted doors, down broken stairs, into tunnels filled with wires, pipes, and whispers. The deeper he went, the less human the world looked. Lights flickered, the air grew thick, and strange symbols glowed on the walls. Finally, he reached the marked location. A metal hatch, half covered in dust and slime, stood before him. He opened it slowly, hand on his knife just in case. Inside was a quiet chamber lit by soft blue light, and there she was, the alien widow, standing next to a small heater, the child asleep beside her. But something about her had changed. She was no longer trembling. Her eyes were clear, her voice steady. You came, she said, like she already knew he would. You left without answering, Jay said, stepping inside. You knew my name and you said people would come for me. She nodded. I did. Why? She looked down at her child, then back at him. My name is Soraya, she said, and I'm not just a widow. I'm the last surviving psychic from the race called Elindra. Jace blinked. Elindra, a race wiped out years ago by the Galactic Syndicate. Hunted because they could read thoughts, bend energy, and break minds without touching them. They said your kind were dangerous. Jace whispered. They were right, Soraya replied softly. But we didn't start the war. We just tried to survive it. She walked closer, slowly, carefully. You helped me without asking who I was, without expecting anything, and because of that, they know about you now. Who? The ones who hunt people like me, she said. They think anyone who helps us is also a threat. Jace felt the weight of the situation hit him like a punch. He had spent his last credit trying to save a life, and now his own was at risk. Soraya stepped even closer. But I didn't bring you here to scare you, she said. I brought you here because I need help. Jace stared at her, unsure if he could trust her. Why me? Because my son is missing, she said, her voice breaking for the first time. The child beside me isn't mine. He's another orphan I found. But my real son was taken by slavers 2 days ago. Jace's heart sank. You let me think. That was your child? I had to keep him safe, she said. But now I can't search alone. They'll find me too easily, and he's only 5. She took something out of her coat, a small pendant with a human name engraved on it. Liam Carter. Jace's breath caught in his throat. That was his brother's name, his brother who died in the Earth Wars, or so he thought. He looked up at her, eyes wide. What is this? Soraya held his gaze. Because your brother is the reason I'm still alive, she whispered. And your nephew is the child we need to save. Snow fell hard across the jagged mountains of Verona 7, but it wasn't the soft snow of Earth. Here, it burned the skin like tiny knives, and it howled with every gust of wind. Jace Carter pushed forward, each step sinking deep into the icy path. Behind him, Saria walked quickly, her thin body wrapped in layers of cloth and old armor. The orphan child, barely speaking, clung to her side. They had left the spaceport that morning, using the old smuggler's trail marked on her stolen map. The only way to reach the slave camp was through these mountains. A direct path would have gotten them caught. The syndicate was watching the skies now, hunting the human who helped a psychic. As the sun began to fade, the sky turned blood red. Jace stopped and looked around. He had a strange feeling. The kind that crawled down your spine and stayed there. Something was watching them. "We need to find shelter," he said. Now, Saria didn't argue. She pointed toward a frozen cave nearby. Half covered by fallen trees and ice, they climbed in, lit a small heat lamp, and sat in silence. The child slept beside them, his tiny hands curled under his chin. Jace pulled off his gloves and stared at the cracks in his skin. "What did you mean back there?" he asked quietly. "About my brother? And your son?" Saria took a deep breath, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Liam Carter was captured during the Earth Wars. Not killed," she said. "He was sent to a prison colony where my kind were kept as test subjects." Jace's hands clenched. That war had taken everything from him, family, home, even faith. "He saved me," she continued. "He protected me when others tried to harm me, and when we escaped. We were separated." She looked down at the sleeping child. "I gave birth to my son 3 months later. But Liam was gone." Jace couldn't speak. A storm had started inside him, louder than the one outside. "I didn't know he had a brother," Saria said softly. "Until I read your name." He nodded slowly. "Then we save him," he whispered, "no matter what." Suddenly, a loud crack echoed from outside the cave. Both of them stood up at once. Not a branch, not wind. Something heavy was moving through the snow. Jace grabbed the knife from his boot. Saria stepped forward, her hands glowing faint blue outside the cave. Shadows moved between the trees, then a shape appeared, tall, hunched, with black fur and glowing orange eyes. A snow beast native to Verona 7. Half blind but deadly, it sniffed the air, attracted by heat and movement. "Stay back," Jace whispered, placing himself between the creature and the child. But before he could strike, Saria stepped forward, her body still and focused. She raised her hand slowly. The air around her shimmered like heat rising from metal. The beast growled and charged. Jace shouted, ready to attack. But Saria's eyes turned silver white, and her hand made a sharp motion. The beast stopped mid-leap, frozen in place. Its body shook violently in the air, muscles twisting, eyes wide with fear. Jace watched in awe and horror. She wasn't just powerful, she was terrifying. The snow beast dropped to the ground, unconscious but breathing. Saria fell to her knees, gasping for air, her hands shaking. Jace ran to her side. "What the hell was that?" he asked. "I used too much energy," she whispered. "It's not just power, it's life. Every time I use it, it takes from me." He helped her sit down. "I didn't know," he said, his voice softer now. "I thought maybe you were dangerous." "I am," she replied, her voice steady again. "But only to those who try to take what I love." They sat together in silence for a while. The beast lay still outside, snow covering its body slowly. Later that night, as Jace watched the stars through a crack in the cave roof, he realized something. He wasn't just helping a stranger anymore. He was part of her story now, and she was becoming part of his. And maybe, just maybe, this cold, broken planet was where something warm could begin again. But deep below them, in the darkness of the ice caves, Syndicate soldiers were already moving. A signal had been sent. The psychic had been spotted, and they were not far behind. The market didn't smell like food or spice. It smelled like oil, sweat, and fear. Deep under the frozen surface of Verona 7, far from sunlight and law, stood the black market auction ring. People didn't come here for goods. They came for lives. Jace Carter stood silently in the crowd, wearing a dirty mask made from metal scraps and cloth. Beside him, Soraya walked with her face covered by a gray veil. Her eyes hidden behind dark glass, they moved slowly, carefully. Trying to look like buyers, not enemies, the orphan child waited safely in a ship above the tunnels. Guarded by a smuggler Soraya once trusted, or hoped to trust. There was no turning back now. They had one chance to find her real son, the crowd. Inside the auction pit was strange. A mix of syndicate officers, alien crime lords, and masked merchants, all bidding on living beings like they were tools. A large alien with 6 arms shouted prices in a dozen languages. Behind him stood a line of captives, heads down, hands bound. Jace's stomach twisted at the sight. Humans, aliens, even children, all marked for sale. He clenched his fists, but Soraya touched his arm gently. "Stay focused," she whispered. He could be here. Suddenly, the lights dimmed, and a tall figure stepped forward. A woman in black armor, her face sharp and cold. A syndicate enforcer. Soraya's body stiffened. She knew that face. "Her name is Kale," Soraya whispered. "She hunted my people." Kale raised her voice. "Next lot. Specialty stock. Recent capture from Sector 12. Guards dragged a group of frightened children into the light. Jace's heart stopped. One of the boys had familiar eyes. Wide, brown, full of fire. Soraya gasped under her breath. "That's him." The boy looked around, confused but brave. He didn't cry. He stood tall, like someone had told him to never kneel. "That's my son," Soraya whispered. "That's Kalen." Jace saw her hand glow slightly, instinctive, dangerous. He grabbed it quickly. "Not yet," he said. "Too many guards, too many guns." Kale pointed at Kalen and began the bidding. The price rose fast, too fast. Someone really wanted the boy. Jace stepped forward and placed a silent bid using a stolen code chip. Soraya stared at him, shocked. "That chip's our escape key," she hissed. "I know," he replied, "but he's family." The crowd went quiet as the final bid was accepted. Jace had won. The guards began to lead Kalen toward them. But before he reached their hands, everything went wrong. Kale raised her hand. "Hold," she ordered. "That buyer. Trace him." An alarm flashed red. Jace felt cold metal lock around his wrist. A hidden scanner had detected the chip's fake ID. "It's a trap," Soraya shouted, grabbing Kalen with one arm, pulling him close. Her eyes lit up with silver. Fire, energy burst from her hand, sending guards flying. Screams filled the air as chaos exploded in the auction pit. Kale pointed her weapon, but Soraya raised a shield of psychic force. Jace pulled the boy behind cover, shooting back with the stolen pistol he had hidden in his coat. Smoke, screams, fire, slaves ran, chains broke. Alarms blared. Jace grabbed Kalen's hand. "Come on, kid," he shouted. "We're getting out of here." They ran, all 3 of them, down a dark side tunnel lit only by flickering red lights. Behind them, Kale's voice roared through the echoing chamber. "You can't run forever." "Soraya." They didn't look back, not once. Finally, they reached the smuggler's ship. The pilot looked nervous, but Soraya stared him down. "Take us." "To orbit," she said. "Now." As the ship lifted into the clouds, Kalen sat quietly beside Jace. The boy looked up and asked, "Are you the man Mom used to talk about?" Jace blinked. "What did she say?" "She said, if anything ever happened, you'd come." Jace didn't answer. He just looked at Soraya, who sat across from him, bruised and silent, her hand holding her son's tightly. But something still didn't sit right. The way Kale hesitated. The way the auction was set up, Jace felt it in his gut. Someone let them take the boy, on purpose. The stars above Verona 7 looked cold and distant. From the small smuggler ship drifting just beyond orbit, it felt like they were suspended between worlds, not free, not hunted, just floating in between. Inside the ship, silence filled the cabin. Jace Carter sat across from Kalen, the boy he had risked everything to save. The boy stared back at him with wide eyes, curious but quiet, Soraya stood by the window, arms crossed, her face hard to read. She had barely spoken since the rescue, only giving orders to the pilot and holding her son close when no one watched. Jace finally broke the silence. "We should talk," he said. Soraya nodded but didn't turn. "I know," he leaned forward. "I've been thinking," he said, "about how easily we got out of that market." Soraya's shoulders tensed. "It wasn't easy," she replied. "You saw the blood." "Yes," Jace said. "But something still feels off." He looked at Kaylin, then back at her. "That auction was too clean, too organized, and Kale ... She let us go." Soraya finally turned, her silver eyes colder than usual. "You think it was a trap?" "I think it still is," Jace said. "And I think we brought something, or someone with us." Soraya's gaze shifted to her son. Her voice cracked slightly. "That's my son, Jace." "Then prove it," he said quietly. "Let's test his DNA." The room went still. Kaylin looked between them, confused. "I thought you were my uncle," he said softly. Jace's heart ached. "I want to be," he replied. "But I need the truth." Soraya didn't move then, slowly. She nodded. "All right," she said. "Let's end the doubt." They used a med kit from the ship's locker, a simple DNA scanner. Jace swabbed the boy's mouth and inserted the sample. The screen lit up, scanning ... blinking ... Processing, then. The results appeared. Match. 0%. Nitrogen monoxide blood relation. Jace stared at the screen. Frozen. Kaylin looked up at him, fear creeping into his voice. "What does it mean?" Soraya turned away, her hands shaking. "You lied," Jace said, voice low. "He's not my nephew." "I didn't lie," Soraya whispered. "I hoped." Jace stepped back, breathing heavily. "We risked everything for him," he said. "I gave up our escape chip." "We were almost killed." "I know," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "But I had to save him." Jace didn't know what to say. Kaylin sat silently, understanding more than a boy should. "I'm sorry," he said to Jace. "I didn't." "No." Jace knelt down and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "It's not your fault," he said softly. "You're just a kid caught in someone else's war." He stood and faced Soraya. "Why him?" Soraya looked into Jace's eyes, pain carved deep into her face. "Because he looked like my son," she said. "Because I thought the universe had finally given me one small miracle." Jace said nothing. The silence felt heavier than the cold ever had. Then a sudden beep broke the stillness. A transmission was being received, encrypted, high-level, syndicate grade. The pilot called from the front. "Someone's pinging our ship." Soraya rushed to the console, pressed a button. A hologram flickered to life, and Kale's face appeared. But this time she wasn't shouting. She smiled slowly. "Well played, Soraya," she said. "Now let's see how long you can keep running with a child that isn't yours." The screen cut off. Jay stepped forward. "They tracked us through him," he said. "The boy's been tagged." "No," Soraya gasped, reaching for Kaylin. Checking behind his ear, she found it. A tiny implant, hidden beneath the skin. She "Let us take him," Jace whispered. "This was never about the boy." Soraya looked at him, her voice trembling. "They're after me." "And you?" Jace nodded slowly. "Then we run," he said, "together." But deep down, he knew something had already changed. The lie had created a crack between them. And now the syndicate could see right through it. Outside the ship, the stars no longer looked peaceful. They looked like watchers, silent, cold, waiting. The smuggler's ship drifted near the moon of Verona 7, hidden in a patch of shadow where scanners couldn't easily reach. But it wasn't safe anymore inside the ship. Tension cracked like ice under heavy boots. Soraya sat on the cold floor, hands bound behind her back, blood on her lip. Jace Carter was gone. The pilot, the one Soraya trusted, had betrayed them. Sold her location to the syndicate in exchange for a new identity and a clean record. She never saw it coming. None of them did. Kaylin was locked in a side cabin, crying softly, his small fists hitting the steel door. Soraya tried to call out to him, But the pilot kicked her back with his steel boot. "No more games, witch," he spat. "You cost too many credits already." A voice crackled over the radio, cold and sharp. "Kales, bring her to the station," she ordered. "Alive if possible." The pilot smirked and turned the ship toward the black void ahead. Toward a massive syndicate station floating above a dying star. A prison without walls, because no one ever came back from it. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Jace Carter wasn't dead. He had been thrown from the ship's ramp during the scuffle, left to die in the icy winds of Verona 7's upper ridge. But Jace never died easy. He had climbed back from worse. He had fought through fire, war, betrayal. This was just another storm, wrapped in a thermal cloak and armed with nothing but a pistol, a knife, and pure will. Jace hitched a ride with a mining skiff, paid for with his last favor and a cracked smile. He didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't breathe without thinking of Soraya's face when they dragged her away. He reached the station 2 hours later, hidden beneath the skiff's cargo. Security was high. Guards posted every 10 steps. Drones flying like metal birds. No one sane would enter that place alone, but Jace wasn't sane anymore. He was in love, and that made him dangerous. He crawled through waste tunnels, broke into the service grid, and mapped every corridor by memory. One by one, he knocked out guards with silent strikes and precise cuts. He didn't kill, not unless he had to. In a supply room, he found an old armor vest and a stolen access card. Then he found a CUM terminal, and with a few clicks, patched into the station's security feed. There she was, Soraya, locked in a containment cell, weak but alive, and Kalen in a separate wing, guarded like he was holding state secrets. Jace's jaw clenched. "You made a mistake, Kale," he muttered under his breath. "You didn't kill me." He moved like a ghost, slipping through dark corridors, disabling cameras with wire and light. One by one, alarms went silent, doors unlocked, lights flickered. The station didn't know what hit it. He reached Soraya's cell and used the card. The door hissed open, and she looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Jace?" She whispered. "How?" "No time," he said, cutting her bindings. "We're leaving." She touched his face gently, as if to check he was real. "You came back," she said. "I never left," he replied. "Now help me get your boy." They moved together now, faster, stronger. She wasn't at full power, but her hands still glowed faintly, enough to bend metal, enough to stop a bullet. They reached Kalen's cell just as guards swarmed in, shouting orders, weapons raised. Jace shot. Without hesitation, ducked, rolled, covered the boy with his own body. Soraya raised her hand and sent a wave of psychic force through the air. Guards flew like paper in the wind, slammed into walls, knocked out cold. "Come on," Jace shouted, lifting Kalen. "Time to go." They ran to the hangar, alarms now screaming across the station. Kale's voice echoed through speakers. "You're not making it out alive," Jace smirked. "We'll see about that." They reached a stolen scout ship. Small but fast, Jace fired up the engines while Soraya and Kalen buckled in. Bullets hit the hull. Lasers flashed past the window. Then, ignition. The ship launched forward, tearing through the hangar doors, breaking into open space. Behind them, Kale's face vanished into smoke and fire. They didn't speak for a while. Just sat, breathing heavy, holding each other. Then Kalen looked up and asked, "Are we safe now?" Jace looked at him, then at Soraya. "No," he said, "but we're together." And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The stars didn't look so far away anymore. From the window of the small ship drifting through uncharted space, they looked soft, like lights in the ceiling of a quiet room. Peaceful for once, Jace Carter sat in the pilot's seat, eyes heavy, but heart calm. They had escaped, but not untouched. His ribs were bruised, his left shoulder burned, and his hands trembled from days without rest. But they were alive. Behind him, Soraya tended to Kalen, wrapping his arm in fresh bandages, whispering soft words in a language older than most stars. The boy had stopped crying. Now he only asked questions, not about war, but about stars. About Earth, about what it meant to be human, and Jace didn't always know what to say, so he told him what he did know. That being human, he said, means getting up when the universe tells you to stay down. After hours of silence, a soft beep echoed through the ship. They had reached their destination, a hidden moon once used by rebel scientists, now abandoned, now theirs. Jace guided the ship down into a forest valley wrapped in silver mist. There were ruins of buildings, old solar panels, broken antennas. But beneath the dust, there was life, wild plants growing through steel, clear streams cutting through fallen rock. A new beginning. They stepped out into the fresh air. Kaylin laughed for the first time, chasing the glowing bug that hovered near the trees. Soraya smiled, tired but whole, her face kissed by soft sunlight. And Jace, for the first time in years, didn't feel like a soldier or a fugitive. He just felt home. Days passed. They repaired shelters, planted food, gathered tech scraps. At night, they sat by a fire, telling stories, not about battles, but about music, family, Earth, and hope. Jace fixed a radio one evening, just in case, not to call for help, but to listen, to know the galaxy was still out there, and maybe one day, they'd return to it on their own terms. One night, after Kaylin had fallen asleep under a blanket, Soraya sat beside Jace, her hand resting over his. "You could have left me 100 times," she said quietly, "and I would have regretted it every time," Jace replied. She looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly like moonlight on water. "When I first saw you, I thought you were just another human," she said. "But you're not." "No," he smiled. "Then what am I?" She leaned closer, her forehead touching his. "You're the one place I feel safe," she whispered. "You're my last war. And my first peace." They didn't kiss, not yet. They just stayed close, breathing the same air, their pain slowly fading under the quiet of the stars. Soraya reached into her pouch and pulled out a small stone, smooth, black, carved with a symbol. "It's a lindrin," she said, placing it in his hand. "It means home is where eyes meet in truth." Jace stared at the symbol. He closed his hand around it, then looked at her. "Then I guess I've been home since the alley," he whispered. She smiled. For once, no psychic glow, no powers, no shields. Just a woman who had been broken and rebuilt by love. That night, the fire crackled softer than usual. Kaylin slept with a smile on his face, dreaming of ships and stars. And Jace Carter lay awake beside the woman he had once saved with a blanket. Now wrapped in hers, now warmed not by heat, but by something older, deeper, love. And for the first time, the galaxy didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a promise.